On the night of October 26, 2016, 23-year-old Angela Barlow sent this text message to her best friend and roommate, Mona Jackson. Just a few days earlier, she had done something unusual. She had agreed to perform at a private party that she had earlier turned down.
It just wasn't adding up, and I told Angie, I said, please do not do this private party because it just didn't seem right at all.
The address Mona received was for an apartment complex on the northwest side of Indianapolis, and Angela's statement was supposed to be a joke, only it wasn't. The next morning, a blue Pontiac G6 was caught on security camera, leaving the apartment complex. The car was Angela's, but police would later discover that she wasn't the one behind the wheel. She never got back into that car after she stepped out the night before, or at least, not while she was conscious. When authorities got involved, they walked straight into a puzzle. From the very beginning, nothing about this case made sense. There were too many missing details, and even more unanswered questions. At the center of it all was one missing woman. Two people insisting she left with someone who might not even exist, and just enough evidence to prove something did happen, but not enough to say what. This is the case of Angie Barlow. In the first week of October 2016, Angie got a message. It was from an unknown number, and the sender was asking if she'd be willing to dance at a private party. She loved to dance, and she often picked up gigs at clubs and parties to earn a little extra cash. So, when that message came in, it wasn't totally out of the ordinary, but something about it felt off. So, she decided she wouldn't respond. A few days later, she changed her mind. She had just gotten back from an impromptu trip when another message popped up from the same number asking the same thing. The trip had left her a little low on cash, so this time around, she texted back saying yes. Since Angie had said yes, it was time to talk details. The person on the other side of the phone was a woman who was planning a surprise party for her husband. Or at least that's what she said. For the next few days, the two women texted back and forth, discussing the arrangements for the party. While they were talking, the woman sent pictures of herself, but she never mentioned her name, which was a bit strange. Angie told her friend Mona all about this new gig, and Mona wasn't having it.
It just wasn't adding up, and I told Angie, I said, please do not do this private party because it just didn't seem right at all.
But even though her best friend of many years didn't approve, Angie had already made up her mind. All she had to do was show up, do the dance, and head out. What she didn't know was that nothing about this party was as it seemed. The day before the party, the 23-year-old received another message from the client. Only this time, it wasn't about timing or location. It was a wardrobe request. The woman asked her to wear red and black underwear so they could match. It was a little weird, but she agreed. A few minutes later, another message came in with the address and a gate code. The next day, which was the day of the party, Angie got dressed and was ready to head out. Before she left, she did the one thing she always did before going to a gig. She sent screenshots of the house address and gate code to Mona. She made it to the venue on time and started doing her thing. At some point, she even sent out a Snapchat video of herself smiling.
And we do believe that that Snapchat was taken in the bathroom at the apartment.
When Angie recorded the video, She had no idea that it would be the last time anyone would hear from her. By the morning of October 27th, Mona realized something was terribly wrong. Her friend hadn't come home, and she wasn't responding to calls or text messages. She started to panic, and since she didn't know what else to do, she contacted Angie's mom, Christina Kramer. The two of them kept trying to reach her, but they couldn't. That evening, Mona got tired of playing the waiting game. She decided to take matters into her own hands, and she knew just where to start. When she arrived at the address Angie had sent her, Mona punched in the gate entry code, but it didn't work. In her desperation, she climbed over the gate and made a shocking discovery. The apartment had been cleaned out. Nobody was there. She immediately called Christina, and they headed over to the police station to file a missing persons report. The police got to work, and in the meantime, the young dancer's family and friends organized a search party. The first real lead investigators got was a video.
The surveillance video from the apartment complex shows Angie Barlow's vehicle, which is a blue Pontiac G6, leaving the complex at around 3:30 in the morning.
The footage also showed something else. There was another car pulling out right behind Angie's. The two cars left the complex together, but there was a problem. Since they couldn't tell who was behind the wheels, investigators ran the plates on the second vehicle and found out that it belonged to a 21-year-old woman named Raven Miller. They also learned that Raven and her boyfriend, Baron McCullough, were the hosts of the private party. This was the first indicator that Angie had walked right into a trap. She and Raven knew each other. In fact, they worked at the same club, but they did not get along. So, if they weren't the best of friends, why would she go to a party hosted by Raven and her boyfriend? Except, she didn't know that they were the hosts.
Angela would not have done this private party if she had known it was Raven and Baron that were throwing it.
Investigators believed that whoever it was that had contacted Angie had tricked her into attending the party, which meant that Raven and her boyfriend weren't working alone. There were now 3 people of interest in the case, but the third person had not yet been identified. So, investigators brought in Raven and Baron for questioning. The couple admitted that yes, Angie was at their party. However, they said that while they stayed behind, she had left at around 3 a.m. with an unknown man. It's not uncommon for scenarios like this to play out at parties, but something wasn't adding it up. For starters, Raven's car that had been caught on camera driving out of the premises right behind Angie's Pontiac. Investigators knew that something was off, but they didn't have any tangible evidence to tie Raven and Baron to the case, so they let them go. 12 days after Angie disappeared, investigators found her car about 8 miles from the apartment where she was last seen. The car was in bad shape. It had been damaged in different places, and the inside wasn't any better. The people who knew the dancer knew that she loved and pampered her car, so to them, the damage and clutter was proof that someone else had been driving. Investigators examined the car, hoping to find DNA samples or anything that could lead them to the missing girl. However, they came up empty, and slowly the case began to grow cold. For the next 7 months, Angie's parents kept their hopes up. They put up billboards and shared flyers with Angie's face and details. They even offered a $5,000 reward to anyone who could help find their daughter, but sadly, nothing came of it. In May 2017, the case took a turn that no one saw coming. Police were investigating a completely different crime when they raided a house and arrested 3 men and a woman named Michelle Brown. While searching the place, they found evidence that connected Michelle and her friends to Angie's disappearance. Michelle herself had some financial documents that belonged to Angie's grandmother. Turns out she had stolen nearly $8,000 from Sharon's account. This was clearly a case of fraud. So why did the authorities think it was connected to the disappearance?
The information that was used to commit the fraud was specific information that Angela would have.
And on top of that, the fraudulent withdrawals on Sharon's account started just after Angie disappeared. Michelle and her accomplices were charged for their crimes, but the authorities couldn't find any concrete evidence linking them to Angie's disappearance, so the search for her continued. On July 20th, 2017, just 4 weeks after the arrests, the authorities got an anonymous tip that changed everything. The tipster told them about an abandoned house in the city. With a search warrant in hand and cadaver dogs on leashes, the boys in blue arrived to search the property. Not long after the search began, the dogs picked up a scent in the backyard, and officers started digging. What they found was the badly decomposed body of Angela Barlow, buried in a shallow grave. The following day, her mother, Christina, walked into the coroner's office with a heavy heart to identify the body. After 8 long months of searching, the case was finally over, but not in the way anyone had hoped. The authorities launched a homicide investigation, and it wasn't long before they found out that a relative of Baron McCullough had once lived on the same property where the body was found. Once again, Raven and her boyfriend, Baron, were the focus of the investigation. Everything about the case pointed right at them, but the problem was that no matter how hard the police tried, they just couldn't find anything that actually tied them to Angie's death. Since there were no other suspects, investigators hit a dead end. It's been 9 years since Angela Barlow decided to attend that private party, and the world is yet to know what actually happened to her that night. The homicide investigation is still open, and the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department is still searching for answers and the person or persons who murdered the 23-year-old.